Hey everybody, it's Doug Schauf with Remax Oceanside and MakeMaineYourHome.com. In this episode of the Make Maine Your Home podcast, I'm going to talk about selling your house. A couple weeks ago, I did a podcast about home buying and, in particular, first-time home buyers, that type of thing. And I thought this time I would talk a little bit about selling a house and what it takes to do that. So let's do this. So just like that podcast a couple weeks ago about home buying, I'm going to kind of use the same format, really just kind of talk about, different aspects of selling a house, things like that. And some of the notes that I have here is like, what do you do first? Like you're thinking, okay, I want to make a move. Okay, obviously you got to have a plan. Where do you want to go? If you're moving out of state, are you relocating? Those types of things. You want to have a little bit of a plan there. Of course, we don't want you to be homeless, but I can assist with that as far as, where do you want to be? I can talk to you about how hard or how simple it is going to be to find you the next place, if you're looking to buy another place. If you're looking to rent or move out of town, I can certainly help point you in the right direction and help with that. So just like on the home buying podcast that I did, really the first step should be, call a real estate broker or some sort of professional. We did a podcast with Bettina Blanchard, who helps people downsize. Maybe a good first phone call would be to somebody like her. But of course, have that plan, start that plan. And the next step, what I always tell people is, probably one of the first things you're going to want to know is the value of your house. Like, how much money are you sitting on your house? And do you have enough money when you sell it to move to your next place? Those are all, of course, very important questions. Now, you probably already thought about this in your head, but again, to really confirm everything, call a real estate broker or an appraiser and say, hey, what's the value of my house? Now, the benefit of calling a real estate broker to do the value of your house is, I don't charge anything to do a value report for you. You literally just call me and say, hey, Doug, thinking about making this move, or hey, I'm just curious about what my home value is. I can come over to the house, take a look at it, get my eyes on everything. We can kind of give me the tour, talk to me about what you've done to the house, what you haven't done to the house, what the house needs, et cetera, and I can start working towards putting a value on the house. Now, real quick, the way I put a value on a house is once I see the house, then I go to the MLS system and I look up what has sold in the area, ideally in the neighborhood. And then what I do is once I find some similar properties that have sold, then I make some adjustments to those properties, whether maybe your house has a 2-car garage and this one only has a 1, so we adjust that way. Square footage, we're able to adjust the dollar amounts, things like that, and have everything aligned. And then I'm able to give you a range, like, hey, your house is worth somewhere between $250 and $265, and I recommend listing it at X price. Okay, and then that will allow you to figure out exactly what you're going to have. Once you know the value, you can subtract any closing costs, commissions, things like that out of that value. And then, of course, what you owe. And then there's all your equity in the house, the money that you're going to walk away from once you close. And then the decision is, hey, is that enough? Or is it too much? Things like that. Those conversations can happen by knowing the value. So that's definitely one of the first things that you should know. And then it comes down to getting the house ready, okay? This is very important to me. We did a podcast with Bettina Blanchard. I plan on doing podcasts with stagers, and we did one with Mr. Handyman. And all these are important to get your house ready to sell. When people come in to buy a house, they don't want to have to do a ton of work, and you also want a good first impression. So if there's any projects that need to be done, we can address those. Where I'm going to come in handy for you, because some projects you don't want to do because maybe they're too big. I get a lot of questions like, hey, should I change out my kitchen countertops? I have the old Formica or the old laminate countertops, and should I put granite in or quartz because that's what everybody wants? That's an expensive thing to do, and I don't normally recommend doing that in your home, because you might pick out something that, the buyer doesn't like, and plus you're not going to get your money back out of it. So what I'm talking about is doing like little projects like, hey, let's touch up some paint everywhere. Or maybe let's fully paint the room. You might love the color of it, but it might not be a neutral color, and we maybe want to smooth that out. And again, touch up paint. If there's any broken trim or anything broken on the house, that we're going to need to disclose anyway, maybe we just take care of it. If there's any roof leaks, of course, those are major. Anything that can be damaging the house, we're going to want to try to take care of. If you don't have the money to take care of it, that's okay. We can always price the house accordingly and still get it sold. The value on your house or the listing price can really dictate or take care of everything. A house will sell, just a question for how much. But to get the most money out of your house, it's all about getting the house ready to sell. So once we go through the house, and I can kind of help you out on like, hey, we should do these projects and these projects, but not this project. We'll come up with a little list of, hey, this is what we should do. Then you can start doing that. And then it's a question of getting the house staged so it looks nice. So when you're driving up to the house, curb appeal is huge. If there's anything out in the front of the house that we can spruce up a little bit, the first impression, just like opening that door and making sure that everything is going to look awesome. I personally bring in a stager on just about every listing I do, and I have a stager walk through the house and give us some guidance as to what to do. If we need any kind of furniture or anything like that, a lot of the stagers I work with can supply things to help out to make the house look as perfect as possible. And one thing I will say that stagers always recommend is decluttering. Pack up a lot of your stuff. The day-to-day living, the ease of having your coffee maker on top of the counter is great, of course. But when you're staging it and trying to show it off, getting everything off your counters. If you have any, like me, my basement is a wreck. That's just our catch-all for everything. But if I were selling the house, I would go down there and organize the basement a little bit. I'm getting ready to move anyway, so it's things that you can do to get the house ready. So when buyers come in, everything looks nice, smells nice, all that kind of stuff. And speaking of smells nice, right before you go live and open house and things like that, cleaning is important. Just clean, just to make the house sparkle a little bit. Okay. You declutter and stage for the photos, but then you clean when showings and open houses start. That's usually how I look at it. So that's kind of like an overview as far as getting the house ready for sale. And I'm going to be able to guide you through all of that. If I feel like, hey, we need to bring in patina for this, or hey, we need to bring in this stager for this, I'm going to help guide you to do it as quickly as possible and really do the best job. So I'm going to help you navigate through all that stuff so you're not overwhelmed with like, oh my goodness. Because a lot of times when I sit down with somebody who's looking to sell their house, they're a little overwhelmed. They kind of have an idea of what the house is worth. They kind of have a list of stuff that they got to do, but they haven't thought of a lot of the things. So it's like, then I start throwing more stuff on their list and it gets really overwhelming for them. So it's important to reach out to a professional, to a broker, or somebody like, an organizer or a stager or something like that to help with that whole process. So then it'll be less overwhelming. So now when you do choose the broker, just like I did in the home buying podcast, I talked about this form, and even on the seller side, it's the broker relationship form. And this, again, you do need, when you're hiring a broker, you should go through this with them, because before we, sign a contract to list your house, there's certain things that you're going to get what they call customer level service. Just like I talked about in that other podcast, we're required, of course, to disclose all material defects, to treat both buyer and seller honestly, account for all money and property received on behalf of the buyer seller, like earnest money, things like that, and comply with any laws. So we got to do, everything's got to be legal. But once we do client up, what I call, or contract up, then perform the terms of the written agreement with skill and care. Promote your best interest. So on the seller side, for seller clients, this means the agent will put the seller's interest first and negotiate the best price and the terms for the seller. And this is straight from the state. So this is all, this is what we're supposed to be doing for you. And maintain the confidentiality of specific client information, including bargaining information. So again, everything's confidential. Before we client up, nothing's really confidential. So you want to watch a little bit about what you say to people that you haven't contracted up with. Okay. So again, you want to sit down with us so we can go through this with you and be informed on that. And then also, if you remember on the podcast of the buying one, I showed you I had one of these. This is a great information packet that I have for selling your home. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of it, but I'll go through some of it. And the reason I'm not going to go through all of it is because it has a lot of market information, like what's happening in the market, how to help navigate today's market. This comes out every quarter. So whenever you're watching this or listening to this, if you want an updated copy, I'll try to put a link in there, or you can just email me and I'll send you over a copy of it so you can review it. But there is some good information in here just in general about, selling your house and all that kind of stuff. And let's see. So access to your property. I get a lot of clients that are like, well, I get kind of antsy when people come through my house, or I've also had clients that said, my door's always open. I don't care. Anybody can come in, whatever, which is quite often here in Maine. First off, often what we do to give access is we put a lockbox on the door, and this allows buyers to access the property. Now, not buyers, but buyer brokers. So if anybody's coming into your house, they're going to be licensed. Some broker's going to be there. Okay, if I represent you as a seller and there's a buyer coming here without a broker, I'm going to be at that property. Okay, and if you want me at every showing, we can discuss that and see if that makes sense for your situation. Some people like to have their broker at every showing, and that's perfectly acceptable. We can chat about the pros and cons about that. And but if I represent you as the seller and I'm not there, there will be a buyer broker here. I'm never sending just a random buyer off the street into your property. But we do like to set up a lockbox so us as brokers, we can have access to it, not have to carry around keys and try to get them to everybody, stuff like that. Okay. And, appointments, typically when people schedule a showing of your house, they typically try to give 24 hours. Depends on how the market is going, of course. Like right now is a really hot market, but depends on when you're watching. You might be watching this and it's a buyer market. So, but right now it's a hot market. So people usually want to get in a property like right away. Oh my gosh, a new property hit the market. I got to go see it. I got to write an offer right away. That's obviously ideal for a seller. But, typically we try to give at least 24 hours notice, and that's gonna depend on your situation. So the point of access to your property is, again, when we're going through all this stuff regarding selling your property, that'll be one of the conversations that we have to make sure that whatever access to your property it suits your needs. If you work from home, we might have to block off certain times. If it's vacant, then hey, we just, let everybody go whenever the heck they can, and then everything in between, and we can discuss all that, go through that together. Okay. And then let's see. Again, this also has a lot of good information about, getting the house ready and things like that. So again, a good like checklist of stuff to do that. This is important. Make sure the house is priced right from the start. So we talked about value and how I'm going to get the value, but if you overprice it in the start, it's you can cause some problems. Like people aren't they're gonna look at it a lot. Sorry, let me say this. Buyers are educated now with the internet and everything like that. They're able to kind of see, they're able to see a lot of the sold properties that I'm able to see. So they're able to kind of do a lot of research on a house. So if a house is way overpriced, buyers kind of know it. They look at it and go, wow, that's a lot of money for that house, but maybe it's worth it. Maybe they'll come out to the open house and check it out. But if it is overpriced, this market will chew you up and spit you out. I mean, no matter what market, if you're overpriced, what's going to happen is you might get some activity right away, but then it'll slow way down. You won't get offers, and then it could potentially become what we call a stale listing, meaning it just hasn't sold and it's just sitting there. And when you have stale listings, what happens is a lot of the public just kind of overlooks it because, oh, that's been there for a while. That's been there for a while, and then what you have to do is drop the price to try to find market value. So when I present a value to people, I usually give a range and then I give a recommended listing price. Okay, some properties are easier to price out than others, depending on rural areas, how many houses have sold in the area, all those types of things. But overall, I'm going to give you a range, and then I'm also going to give you a list price, which obviously is going to be somewhere in that range. And I'm going to say, hey, this is the price I feel that is going to generate offers in a reasonable time frame and potentially get you more. Because if you underprice a little bit, you'll get bid up to market value. Market value always happens, one way or another. So we're just trying to get you there quickly and in the best way. All right. And again, it depends on the type of market that you're in. Right now, it's a hot market, so even if you underpriced it a little bit, you're going to get a ton of offers and it's going to bid way up. Once it turns into more of a buyer market, you're going to want to try to price your home in that sweet spot of, hey, it's worth it, and kind of let the buyers come and all that kind of stuff. So let's see. And then, a lot of people try to do a for sale by owner, meaning that they're not going to hire a broker. They're just going to try to, throw a sign out front and do whatever kind of advertising they can. And, sometimes they might feel like, hey, it's, the market's hot, so I'm just going to do it. There's a lot can go wrong there. First off, for sale by owners cannot get the type of exposure that us as brokers can. Okay. It's literally like you might think you're getting a lot because maybe you can post it on one website and you're getting a lot of traffic. But I have like a number of websites that drive just as much traffic as maybe one. So I'm able to cast a net over a much bigger crowd. And even in a hot market, you want as many eyeballs as possible looking at that house. That's what's going to help get you your market value, or maybe even a little bit more. All right. So the amount of exposure that you can get through a real estate broker is much, much larger than if you try to do it yourself. And then another big thing is you got to negotiate with a lot of different people. I mean, I don't know what your business is or what you're in, and you might negotiate a lot of things. But there's a lot of things to negotiate in real estate that you might not be used to, and you might not know exactly how to do it. And that's where I'm able to come in, or any real estate broker can come in. We're not just negotiating price of the property. I mean, we got to disclose, material defects that's wrong with the house. So we're going to have to negotiate that, or supply that information in a way that helps you as a seller. You're going to have to negotiate potentially with the appraiser. If the appraiser comes in and maybe comes in a little bit low, that's bad for you as a seller. And we can help negotiate that. And if you're not aware of that you can negotiate that, you're just going to lose money. When the buyer comes in and does their inspection, there's potentially, or almost always, a lot of negotiations around inspections. And us as brokers, we're going to help you navigate that and make sure that you get the best deal for you and the buyer, really. I'm a big advocate for everybody walks away happy. I mean, I don't want you to give up too much, but also I think if we take too much from the buyer, sometimes the buyer gets, some animosity and maybe finds a way to back out, and then leaves you high and dry, or maybe then down the road they start to, negotiate harder and hold their ground, and it just makes it more difficult. The smoother things can go to get to the closing table, everybody walks away happy. That's great. And there's a lot of things, again, to negotiate through this whole process, right up until the day of closing. I've had closings recently where on the day of closing, final walkthrough, there was a couple problems at the final walkthrough, had to be dealt with. Yeah, fast too, because we were closing right away. So, there's things that can happen right up until the end, and that's where a broker is going to be able to help out. And then lastly, as far as, for sale by owners, things like that, the other thing is, in this day and age, everybody likes to sue everybody just for anything. And, do you really want to be out there promoting your house? And what if you disclose something in the wrong way? Okay, we know how to do that. You might not, because you're not familiar with that. Or just, something. You didn't disclose the right piece of information. You may or may not have done it maliciously or illegally, but the buyer can sue anybody, and they might come after you, if something's not done properly. And us as real estate brokers, we can make sure all those things are taken care of and help you out in that way. Okay. And then last thing I'll touch on, well, the second to last thing, because I guess the real last thing is you move. But one thing I do have is my marketing plan, to get houses sold. All right. I'm assuming most brokers have this. If they don't, you should talk to them about, what they do to get a house sold. I made a list here to help people kind of see, everything that I do. All right. A lot of it might be stuff that you know about, like open houses, broker tours, sign out front, things like that. But where I really shine are two or three things. Staging. I'm all about getting the house ready. That's why I talk so long about that, and bringing in the people to really make the house look the best it can possibly look. And that first impression, that's extremely important to me before it even hits the market. So when those photos are being taken, it's the best. And when people are walking in for the first time, it's the best. So that's extremely important to me to help out with that. Secondly is video work. Now a lot of people just come in and take pictures. Some brokers even just use their phones, to take pictures. I hire a professional photographer, and I also do a lot of video work. If you follow me on social media, I do a video almost every day. And having people that are searching for houses not just look at pictures, but then also see a video of me pitching the house in the right way can go a long way to get people here to your house and then ultimately sell it. All right. And then the other big thing is social media. I'm big advocate of being on social media, using it properly, advertising there. The days of like putting an ad in the newspaper, which I still do for open houses, are almost gone, because the newspapers, the advertising for real estate doesn't seem to work as effectively as it did at one time. So I spend a lot of time on focusing on social media and the internet, because that's where everybody is. That's at least where the majority of everybody is, and that's where I focus on getting out there. So that's my marketing plan. If you'd like more information about this, send me an email. I can send you this document, and I'm also happy to sit down with you and just go through everything line by line, talk to you about how I do all of this. All right. And then lastly is the move. Hire a moving company, load up all your stuff, get out of here, enjoy the next phase of your life. That's what it's all about when you're selling a property. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, hopefully this was a good overview of it. And that's kind of what I wanted to achieve here today. But if you have questions, send me an email, comment below, share this, all that kind of stuff. And remember, if you're going to make Maine your home, you don't have to do it alone.